China giving the death blow to the world. You're not going to want to miss this program. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Wealth Transfer. I'm Terry Osaka. China's death blow is the real deal, folks. Wait until you see this program today, and you're going to want to stick around to the very end. I have something at the very end that is going to set you in a frenzy of curiosity that you're going to want to do a little more research on your own, but it's going to make you connect dots and go, I think we figured it out. And once you see that, you'll understand how huge the deception is in our world today, and why they're doing it is because of the collapse of the economic system. So I'm going to go into showing you why I'm saying China's death blow is here. Now, this is going to be information of what our current banking system in the United States is doing, how we are absolutely imploding on our soil, but the Chinese know it. That's why I can contend that to some extent this may have been a setup from the beginning. How convenient that the virus just happened to come out when there was an election year, the banking system's collapsing, and it was almost like it's almost like going to war without shooting a bomb. And I don't know that for sure. Obviously, I'm just blowing that out, but I'm just saying how convenient for China to be the recipient beneficiary of everything that's happened in the last 18 months. And you notice China doesn't have a problem with viruses in their country. And if it originated there, why wouldn't that be the case, considering they have so many people? So, and their kids go to school without masks. I mean, you look at the Chinese culture right now, they're completely different than the way the Western world is behaving. So the question is, how? And then secondly, why are we still so totalitarian? But anyway, let's get into this. Now, this is the reverse. What I want to show you is what's going on. Now, we talked about this before. It's called the repo market. Now, what the repo market is where banks would go into an overnight lending facility that was controlled by the Federal Reserve, and they borrow money from other banks and financial institutions. A lot of times it's just to balance the books out. And they do this overnight. They borrow what they need from somebody else. They get charged a little bit of interest, and then in the next day, they'll pay it off. So the loaning bank gets to make a little bit of money on something sitting there, and the borrowing bank gets to clear the books, even though it all sounds pretty cookie, doesn't it? Because the next day they pay it off because they redo the booking. See, it's very, very fudgy what's going on in our accounting system. But the repo market was a standard operating procedure for banks to kind of clear out the books, and that is known as the repo market. Normally these rates are low. 0.5%, 0.25%, 0.75%, but something happened. I'm going to outline it to you. But normally where repo bursts, meaning the rates go really high and the demand is explosive, is at the end of a quarter. And so the end of a quarter is when the real big balancing takes place, and all these banks pile into the repo market, and because of the high demand, it spikes up the overnight rates on the money that is borrowed. So I want to show you this amazing image that outlines a typical quarter-ending spike in the repo rates. And you're going to understand why when I get done explaining this to the end of the program. You're going to understand why this is really important, because this is our survival. But why end of quarter spikes are normal, but then look what happened conveniently during COVID and now. So take a look at this. Now, what you're looking at is a chart of reverse repo usage. Now, I'm going to explain what reverse is in a moment. I just want you to see the spikes. Now, the green arrows there, the quarter end, those are very typical high volume spikes at the end of a quarter. And you can see it amplified on the left side, how high the spike actually goes. Now, that would be fairly normal, especially during the last 8 years or so because of the stress in the banking system. Then look at the spike that happened literally 6 weeks before the COVID was actually announced into our country. Look at the COVID crash spike, huge. Now look at the right side. Look at the quantitative easing QE endgame and how high that spike is going. Now, reverse repo. What it really means is the Fed, they issue treasury notes, they monetize and issue treasuries into the market system. Then they're turning right back around, taking those treasuries back out of the market and putting them into the repo for collateral. It's messing everything up. It's not good, but this is the shell game we're at right now and why we need to be so absolutely protective of our portfolio. Because the reverse repo, they're doing the opposite of. They're taking bonds out, putting them back into the repo market. It's nothing but shell games. And here's the catastrophe of that. You can't even begin to believe how many people actually have ownership of one treasury. Think about that. There's probably 5, 6, 7 different owners because of the swaps and the reverses and how they're playing this game. Multiple owners of one asset. That's not good. That's not good at all. That's like in the silver market where they have probably right now 500 ounces sold on fake paper derivatives for every 1 real ounce in the vault for delivery. So that's 500 people on one side of the street and 1 ounce on the other, and they say, go. Who's going to actually get the real asset? That's what's happening in the bond market too, because our treasuries are just going through the roof because we're in serious debt trouble. Now, a better way to explain this in a visual that really outlines. The COVID crash was so severe to the financial system. The repo market was hitting over 10% in the overnight rate. No bank wanted to loan another bank money at the moment, and the Fed had to step in with literally hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars to bail the banking system out right at the very moment we were dealing with this virus being presented to the world. So most people didn't catch this. But take a look at this visual and explanation. I think it'll really wrap this part up. Green spike in the middle is the COVID spike. And then on the right, look at the volume and the need and the seriousness in the banking system. Now, as a gentleman poser noted on Monday, use of the facility of the repo market has never been this high outside of quarter end turns. And the fact that the use of the facility is this high on a sunny day, mid-quarter, means that banks don't have the balance sheet to warehouse any more reserves at current spread levels. Translation, folks, the Fed is taking treasuries out of the market through QE purchases, putting them right back in via the reverse repo. Shell game. Very, very dishonest, but it's money math, like funny math. But this is how we're surviving right now. So under these conditions, doesn't that put a red flag for you to protect your assets? To get prepared for what's in front of us. This is how important it is, you see, why tangible assets are so vital. Now, we see the consequence of all of this money printing. We're seeing the major inflation. We're seeing the now hyperinflation that is approaching. Even Bank of America is saying it. So all of this is playing out, but it's showing us, we the people that are paying attention, that this is not a stable or a normal system. And here's the worst part. We can't fix it. The currency's already out into the system. It's out there. You can't pull it back. The only way you can fix it is to raise interest rates. Well, we can't raise interest rates. We are in so much debt as in the United States as a government that if we raise the interest rates, it will cost us more in interest payments than we can afford. Every quarter point adds another $50 billion in interest payments. So now do you see where we're at? We're in a worse and a really bad scenario. Why we need to be protective, why we need to be proactive in protecting our portfolio. And this is definitely one way to do it. And there's so many factors coming. Please get protected. Got to take a quick break. Take this information serious.
The world is at a tipping point. Our fragile food supply is being destroyed by locusts and fires. A global viral pandemic is collapsing the economic supply chain, impacting financial markets all around the world, leaving you and your finances more vulnerable than ever. Now is the time to protect and preserve your assets. Cornerstone Asset Metals is here to help you protect and preserve what you've worked so hard to gain. Whether you have IRAs to protect, 401ks to preserve, or cash in the bank, our asset specialists are here to support you. Call now and we'll send you urgent information regarding changes to the dollar and the challenges to our economy that you need to be prepared for. Learn how easy it is to roll over your current IRA or 401k into a physical precious metals IRA. We can even arrange to have your precious metals stored in a private vault or send it directly to your home. Do not delay. Call 888-747-3309 today. That's 888-747-3309. Invest in precious metals and create security in your future today. Call now.
Welcome back. So why is this really important to us, considering this is just, well, bank to bank, so what do we care, right? Well, the problem is it's causing issues in our ability as small business people to get loans, to function in our small business communities. But there's an interesting thing here to see, because this is the Federal Reserve sponsoring this speculation, causing this issue. And take a look at this, is what the real interest rates are today. And this is important to note because we've never experienced this. And most of you in your 70s and 80s, you've never seen this either. We have never seen negative rates at this capacity. But take a look at this. So the Fed-sponsored speculation, real interest rates are at a negative 4.1%, lowest since 1980. The real interest rate is negative 4.09 adjusted for housing prices, and the real interest rate is even more negative. That is big, big business. Negative interest rates. It's like, here, let me give you $1 and you give me 75 cents back. You see? It doesn't work that way. That's not a functioning economy. That's not good economics. It's bad. But the negative real rates, now, and I take it back, it looks like some of you may have seen that in the 80s, but that was that they spiked the interest rates at that point then, remember, up to 17, 18, 19%. We can never do that again, folks. We will never, ever, ever be able to do interest rates like this ever again. Can't, because we can't afford the amount of payment we would make on our debt. So if they say they're going to raise rates, it's just gamemanship, because all they could really do is maybe do a quarter point, but even a half a point would raise $100 billion in interest payments on our debt alone. So what we're outlining here is the actual systemic collapse of our financial banking system. That's why I know within the next 2-3 years, something has to give, because you can't fix this. Inflation can't be pulled back. We're going to have a deflation because of economic collapse, but the inflation is still going to stay intact because things will be expensive, because this is not worth what it used to be in buying power. And that's why this buys significantly more than it did years ago. That's why I say hedge intangible assets. So we know the prices are skyrocketing, but take a look at this chart to just visualize. This is how they destroy a monetary system. This is how they print currencies, and over time, because it's incremental, we don't notice. And here prices continue to get more expensive, and our standard of living becomes more and more reduced. And this is the best way to show you. Take a look. Now, this is Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, all items in U.S. cities average. This goes on the left from 1950 to where we are today. If you notice, it has been significantly and consistently. Now, from 50 to 70, we were still in a gold standard. It was mild. And look from the middle of 1975 straight up, that's the pricing index of consumer prices. So incrementally over these decades, they have been kind of nipping away at the heels of your stored wealth and your stored savings. That's why back in the day, in the 70s and 80s, you could buy this silver for $1 an ounce, and now it's going to cost you $33 an ounce to get, if not more. Try buying American Eagle, it's $40, you see, because the paper currency doesn't buy you the same. Now, that is consumer prices, and I've been able to outline to you, and we've talked extensively, why inflation is so bad, but it's not just transitory because it's been going on for decades, you see. But what is our real buying power doing then? What does this really buy us then, right? Well, we know because we're shopping. We know because we're putting gas in. We're buying automobiles and clothes, right? We know the inflation. But take a look at the buying power chart so you can feel comfortable understanding what we're saying, how close of an end we are to this currency system. Take a look at this. Because this is the purchasing power of a consumer dollar. Index value, not seasonally adjusted, but that doesn't really matter. What's very interesting is back in the 2008 collapse, we actually had a purchasing power recovery, if you notice that. It actually went up, like the dollar strengthened there for a small period of time. But then it steadily has been declining ever since the great collapse, the great recession of 2008. Look at where we are on the right, continuing to decline in the ability of you to use your hard-earned wealth to buy something, for services, for food, rent. Now, what about savings for the future, you see? What about our standard of living for the future? Or as the Bible would say, what about the inheritance to our children and children's children? Do you think saving this up, which I talk to people that do, blows me away? I've talked to people in their 80s, late 80s. They've been saving this the whole time for their children and grandchildren. I'm thinking, oh, if they only understood the beauty of saving this over those decades, how significantly wealthy they would have been. Greatest story I can tell is I have a dear friend in numismatic, which is like collectible coins and currencies and such. And he was telling me a story about a gentleman who got an inheritance from his grandfather, inherited a home, was remodeling the home, tore into a wall, and taped to the 2x4s of the wall were stacks of cash. Now, what's interesting is the stack of cash was a $20 gold certificate note. Because if you remember in the day, a gold coin, it was just one gold coin, was a $20 gold piece, which today that same gold coin's worth $2,000 an ounce, right? So the man was excited. He brings this currency into my friend because he figured it was collectible currency. It was no longer exchangeable for gold, but it was still collectible because it was in really good shape. So we did the calculation. It was about $250,000, about $250,000 in gold certificates. Now, he got a little bit more than that because they were collectible and he was happy, you know, it was free. But think of this, if his grandfather would have put gold coins taped in the wall instead of the currency, we did the math. That young man would have inherited a whopping $14 million. $250,000 in currency taped to the 2x4, or $14 million in gold. That is storage of value over time. That is preserving buying power. That is wealth. Now, there's nothing we can do about it now. If you've been saving currency your whole life, you never did that, there's nothing we can do. But what we can do is stop the insane cycle of holding on to an asset, which this isn't an asset, but we consider it in our head an asset. An asset is something of value. And this is losing tremendous value. Matter of fact, it's almost at zero. You'll be surprised. You'll see within a couple of years it's collapsing. Why are we not converting, if it's just for the inheritance to our children and children's children, why are we not converting into this and gold? I'm not exactly sure myself, except that it's just education and it's understanding the process, which I know Cornerstone is phenomenal at doing. So I highly recommend giving them a call, register for information. They'll look after you, they'll at least guide you through the process on being properly diversified. So I've got some good stuff. Remember, I said right to the very end, wait till you see this, but I have to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
The world is at a tipping point. Our fragile food supply is being destroyed by locusts and fires. A global viral pandemic is collapsing the economic supply chain, impacting financial markets all around the world, leaving you and your finances more vulnerable than ever. Now is the time to protect and preserve your assets. Cornerstone Asset Metals is here to help you protect and preserve what you've worked so hard to gain. Whether you have IRAs to protect, 401ks to preserve, or cash in the bank, our asset specialists are here to support you. Call now and we'll send you urgent information regarding changes to the dollar and the challenges to our economy that you need to be prepared for. Learn how easy it is to roll over your current IRA or 401k into a physical precious metals IRA. We can even arrange to have your precious metals stored in a private vault or send it directly to your home. Do not delay. Call 888-747-3309 today. That's 888-747-3309. Invest in precious metals and create security in your future today. Call now.
Welcome back. Fascinating stuff. Really. It shows that the banking system is so stressed out. And what does all this got to do with China, people might be saying, if I said China's going for the death blow? It's because they know this. And if you were ever, I watch a lot of Wild Kingdom stuff, while I'm doing paperwork. And one thing that's interesting is lions and a lot of these predators, they like to go after the weaker ones, the ones that are injured or older or the babies who can't keep up, and they attack them. Hence, China knows America is going down. Now, we still have the greatest military today. Of course, if they keep weaseling the military down the way they are, we're just going to be pathetic. I can't even imagine. And I'm ex-Army, National Defense Medal out of the Iraq time frame. I'm in, I get it. But this is not a military of strength. They are right now turning this military into the biggest marshmallow snowflake I've ever seen in my life, which is very bad. Now, beyond that, America's imploding. Look at us internally. We have a tremendous amount of ignorance, and we have a tremendous amount of lack of education. And those on the left have always been gaming for communism and socialism. And right now, a vast majority of those running our government with this, rigged elected administration are communists and socialists. And so that's a weakness. It's destroying us. We are fighting internally as a nation. BLM, Antifa, this, that. What's crazy? BLM, Antifa, they've just reaping havoc, blown up, burning down. And yet nobody on the other side has done anything about it yet. And I mean the strength of the other side. I'm talking the cowboys, ex-military, militias, groups, right, that would say, you want to come into my city and burn it down? Now, in my town, that was kind of almost similar to that. I'm not so sure those people would want to come into my state because they're going to get a tough nut of military and cowboys they're not going to want to go up against. But our country's being destroyed internally. We are morally decaying, unbelievably morally decaying. Even our church is decaying. All you have to do is look at Franklin Graham and what he's trying to tell people to do to know we're in bad place. Because, listen, if you think that was a good idea, Mr. Graham, to say to the people, you're either really ignorant or you have zero discernment because it's not what you said it was. And that's very, 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 I think, disrespectful to the human body to make those accusations. So that's your choice. But we're imploding, you see, in our culture. The Chinese know this. You see, they know, they see our weakness. They see us tearing each other apart, all by design, I believe. I believe mainstream media is designed to tear us apart, to hate one another. That's what they want us to do. If we just loved one another, they lose. But we can't because there's so much hate being fomented. So we're dealing with these collapsing buying power prices. We're dealing with interest rates that are going negative. Is that not telling you the banking system's collapsing? And the Chinese know this, you see. We are financially becoming weak. Now, our military is there, I say, but we're financially weak. And one of the best examples of the consequence of what happened the last 18 months, take a look at this. This is the used vehicle value index. Look at the unbelievable price rises on the right for used vehicles. Now, that happens to go into because of the chip shortage, but this whole shutdown from the COVID has collapsed our supply chain. They say it's going to take 2 years to fix this. At least 2 years. Meaning chips in everything we have are delayed. Automobiles are losing production by millions and millions, so used cars are going through the roof. That's why we're seeing inflation problems and near hyperinflation, because now there's bottlenecks in supply chains and there's still tremendous archaic restrictions in certain regions for lockdowns, and they're just not able to produce. So the Chinese know this. What's interesting is they're partying over in China. They have big outdoor parties in Wuhan. Their kids go to school with no mask. They're not having a problem. How convenient, isn't it? But what are they doing that are setting the death blow to the Western world? It's right here. Take a look. Now, ever since China launched its digital yuan in 2019, Western commentary has reacted to the initiative with waves of nonsense. Many of these articles suggest that the People's Bank of China has stolen a march on the Western banking system. Many claim that China's digital effort will secure the yuan global status and enable it to supplant the dollar, the world's premier currency. Well, I'm not so sure it's going there, but the venerable Economist magazine, which that's the Rothschilds, that's the Luciferians, the magazine forecasts soon everyone everywhere will be using a digital yuan. The most recent wave of commentary emerged after the Federal Reserve and other central banks announced that they too are looking into digital versions of their own respective currencies. They're doing it. You see? They're going to blow out cash and start digital currency wars so they can spend into the atmosphere. China knows we're weak. They're leading the way in the digital world, and they're taking down the Western system. Now, I told you real quick before we go, one last image is going to, when you connect dots, wait until you see this. Because here's my take. This seems awfully fishy, doesn't it? Take a look at this. This was from a medical report on healthcare and politics back in January 11th, 2017, right after President Trump won the election. Dr. Fauci comes out and says, quote, "No doubt Trump will face a surprise infectious disease outbreak." Huh? How did he know that? And how convenient that the infectious disease outbreak happened in the year of the election. Oh yeah, because of gain-of-function research, right? They were doing the spike protein. They knew it was in the laboratory. They had this because it was a man-made bioweapon. Wow. And look at that quote from him. Connect the dots. Stay vigilant. God bless you. See you next week.
Wealth Transfer News presents the brand new documentary, End Times and Our Financial System. To properly understand Bible prophecy, we must first understand the global financial system. After working in the financial world for many years, the creators of this documentary have compiled the most relevant information, all from a biblical worldview. The world has changed overnight, and something is about to happen to our monetary system that we have never seen. How does the most prosperous nation on earth collapse? How exactly does inflation hurt the economy, and how will the global transition to a full digital currency affect you? All of these questions are answered from a biblical perspective. To order your copy, go to endtimesdocumentary.com. That's endtimesdocumentary.com.